Alright, let's talk about Garfield. As we all know, they're about to take another big swing at Garfield now with Chris Pratt as the main antagonist. And let me just tell you, this damn movie has had so many modern trailers bringing out every single possible scene from this movie. I feel like I could stitch together the entire thing at this point. And I gotta watch this damn cat get blow-dried 50 times before the movie comes out. Seriously, what you're seeing right now is shuffled footage of every trailer clip released, at least that I can find digitally online. And there's just so much goddamn content. It's 40 minutes I have here. 40 minutes of shuffled Garfield Chris Pratt trailer movie stuff. And I've heard it's even worse in America. You guys have all sorts of Garfield collaborations like a giant lounge chair. I found recently Garfield cheese strings. Some movies really have this like wild marketing scheme. This is basically the Addams Family 2 sequence. And I'm baffled that there's just so much money being dumped into this thing. And like, I get it. It's a big brand. Everyone knows Garfield. You just need people to go to the latest Garfield thing. And I'm sure the movie will run. Wow. But like, my God, I would, if I made a video every time a trailer dropped, I would cover like twice a day Garfield content. So instead, with the inevitable run-up of Garfield clearly coming to us, and I'm sure there'll be 8 more trailers in the next week before the movie comes out, let's talk about the actual history of Garfield, because this, of course, isn't the first time they've tried to make a theatrical Garfield movie, and boy is it fun to be nostalgic on the olden times. And in fairness, it has been a while since the original stab of the old lasagna boy. 18 years since the last one, to be precise, and bang on 20 years since the first. I can't believe we were blessed with that long of a break. Can't wait for Garfield 4 in a couple of years' time. Or heck, maybe they'll give us a pause. Maybe that'll be a thing that every 20 years, a new reincarnation of Garfield will appear in the cinema. If there's any being in this universe of IPs that could be reincarnated, it's Garfield. And like, it's not really a great sign that it still feels kind of like they're just doing another one, when the first attempt's 20 years old now. But hey, they've made it now, in the latest edition of what is an interesting franchise. This will be the 3rd theatrically released Garfield movie. Are you aware of the second one? Before this year's The Garfield movie, we had Garfield, the movie. Totally different. And then, of course, we had the only one of the 3 to not have a bare-bones basic title, and an underrated one, maybe? A classic? I'll be revisiting it for this video. Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties. And following that logic, I can't wait to see the 2044 release of the movie Garfield. There's also some straight-to-DVD cheap animation follow-ups, starting with Garfield Gets Real, releasing the year after in 2007. Kind of a weird title, matched with the poster of him climbing out of the newspaper strip as if he's coming out into the real world. And this was coming off of 2 live-action movies where he very much already got real. I don't know, man. Doing a cheaply animated straight-to-DVD movie with the getting real premise when you've literally had 2 movies of Garfield in the real world is just kind of weird, but again, Garfield just reincarnates. He could be doing anything every given time. His memory wipes every 3 years. He's like a goldfish. And DVD sequel cheap animations was a particular string of Garfield movies coming out 3 years in a row, as they then put out Garfield's Fun Fest in 2008, which is an incredibly dodgy title to have to say out loud for a kids movie, Garfield's Fun Fest, and then concluded by Garfield's Pet Force in 2009. So, eat your heart out, Paw Patrol. To be fair, I'm all for a version of Paw Patrol where they all look so done and annoyed the whole time. I could also see a version of Paw Patrol where all of the Paw Patrol members are real IP cats and dogs. Oh my God, I can see that, like a Garfield collaboration with Scooby-Doo and Superdog, and like all the animals, all the dogs and cats in one room. It's an awful idea. Don't let Warner Brothers own this IP. Or heck, Paw Patrol and Garfield are both covered by Paramount now, so I guess that could happen. And Sony, who's distributing the new Garfield movie, might be buying Paramount too. So I guess we're getting the Smurfs in there real soon, and a fart emoji over in the corner. Now, obviously, the story of Garfield doesn't begin with that Sony Paramount acquisition. We have to go back to 1976, which, to be fair, isn't as far back as I thought. I guess those wartime cartoons of Odie punching Hitler whilst smiling were just in my imagination. Anyway, Garfield famously began life as a newspaper strip created by Jim Davis, and when it came to the name, unsurprisingly, Davis went for John. Yeah, that's right. Originally, John was billed as the titular character. To be fair, I love how John losing his own comic strip title to his cat is such a Garfield thing to happen. Like, that's the perfect summary of their relationship, if you ask me. Not that I really feel bad for him. Once you've pandered to feeding your cat what is essentially a tray of thick pasta and cheese, you have permanently ruined the boundaries with this animal, and you will be ruthlessly punished next time you look at the litter box. Now, Davis took a blend of inspiration, combining his own cat with the name and personality of his grandpa. Anyway, the comic was a sensation, the Simon's cat of its day, not to incite a lawsuit or anything. By 1982, the comic strip was circulating in 1,000 different newspapers worldwide, generating $15 million in merchandise alone, which back in the 80s actually meant something on the corporate level, as Davis founded the company Paws Inc. just to manage the comic strip success. The cat was a hit, with books of the strip soon making the big dollar and a cartoon for TV being launched in 1980. Voiced by actor Scott Beach, this first TV appearance set the tone for really how a lot of people still hear the Garfield voice today, if you're not imagining Bill Murray. The comic strips may have personified Garfield as his scrumpy, lazy self, but the voice from these cartoons was what most people essentially heard when reading Garfield going forwards. It's why Bill Murray's dry delivery was such a good choice for the live-action movies, and perhaps also why Chris Pratt seems like a terrible one. That, and that he's basically become a meme of odd voice acting choices at this point. He was okay as Mario, whatever. So, now that you've made it halfway through this video, do let us know your thoughts partway through. Is the Garfield franchise one you're interested in or optimistic for this movie for? Do you adore the classic Bill Murray movies as much as he hates them? And what's your opinion of Monday? I gotta know how much you hate it. Let us know all that and subscribe on the side if you haven't already, and I shall let you get back to the rest of the story that is the Garfield franchise. I'm doing my part for the social media marketing, I guess. Anyway, after his initial media dominance, a movie was going to come about one day. Cut to the early 2000s, and we were knee-deep in live-action hybrids of popular cartoons. Starting with the Flintstones in the early 1990s, which, just to add, was a giant hit at the time and became one of the highest-grossing movies of 1994. So it was definitely proven that there was money in this subgenre, and I love that movie. That's a great one. I've missed an opportunity to call it a mammoth hit. And then following that up with Space Jam, the Scooby-Doo movies, this was a working format, and Paws Inc. wanted a piece of the action. The result, of course, being the 2004 Garfield, the movie, which, though I think a lot of kids at the time honestly really enjoyed, wasn't the best received movie in the world. It holds 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. I had no idea. I thought 18 train crashes happening at the same time seemed like good stakes. What do I know? But looking back, there were several questionable decisions, such as largely lifting the Garfield character design and just giving it real-world cat fur, whilst keeping Odie as a normal dog. Personally, I think it would have been weirder if they tried to make Odie look more comic accurate. That would have been absolutely terrifying. Nonetheless, it did make money. It made over $200 million on a $50 million budget, which, in fairness, is fairly respectable returns. I'm surprised Garfield even looked that good, considering most of that budget was probably just to pay Bill Murray, and he's famously said that it's one of his biggest regrets in his career. And then there's also the infamous story of how Murray thought director Joel Cohen was in fact Joel Cohen of the Coen brothers, which is why he agreed to do it in the first place. Anyway, of course, they immediately went all in on a sequel to come out just 2 years later, and the result is quite something. Because the natural sequel to this movie was obviously an adaptation of A Tale of Two Cities. All in the name of getting Tim Curry in as a British Garfield doppelganger, they contrive a story that airlifts the entire core cast to the UK. From there, we get Billy Connolly cast in a role that was very evidently written for John Cleese before he turned down the role. If anything, I'm surprised John Cleese didn't sue them over this Basil Fawlty lift of a character. Inevitably, we then get the swap of the two kiddies. John can't hear Garfield talk, so can't hear the accent switch. Garfield very much settles into his aristocratic life and befriends some farm animals to make him lasagna. There's a dog who is obsessed with shouting trousers before ripping them off unassuming house staff. This movie is absolutely unhinged, and to be fair, I respect them for going so rogue with this second movie. Of all the stories they could have told with all of these decades of comic strips to bounce off of, the 2-year deadline pressure hosed this result out of them. 5 stars, no notes. Box office, a few more notes. It made $143 million on a $60 million budget. In other words, compared to the first, it cost more and made less, which I guess was enough to end things there. Not even the tie-in video game could save it, whose very existence is just incredible. We were so deep into the movie video game tie-ins that Garfield 2: A Tale of Two Kitties, the game, was released on PlayStation 2 and Nintendo DS. The good old days. However, as we've discussed, that didn't stop Paul Inc. there. They went on to produce their own trilogy of straight-to-DVD movies literally the year after A Tale of Two Kitties. For Garfield fans, they had non-stop feature-length content between 2006 and 2009, so lucky them, I guess. Or not so lucky, as after that, they'd have to wait until 2024 for this new movie. Greenlit back in 2016, it was announced that independent studio Alcon Entertainment would produce the film. However, things got a little more complicated when Paramount bought out Paws Inc. in 2019, putting the film on hiatus. However, they eventually worked things out, with Sony being the ultimate distributor, though under their Columbia Pictures label, seeming as they had their own animation thing going on. The result is a movie that is hard to pin down exactly who made it, but it's coming out from some company. Obviously, the publicity has been off the charts ever since Chris Pratt added Garfield to his "I'll just play myself in an animated movie now" glove. And whilst the internet went on a riot about it, ultimately, you have to admit that suddenly everyone knew this movie was happening, even without the Garfield cheese string and big Garfield chair. As I've said in previous videos, the trailers certainly aren't selling me on the movie, so really that casting has been the best marketing they've had, even for the wrong reasons. Or just the pure, unadulterated, unapologetic nuclear exposure they're shoving into every American on your giant island. And even on the digital sphere, the social media team have been pretty solid and unrelenting. They've had Garfield jump on practically every trend under the sun. They're seriously just letting these social media managers go through their entire wet dreams in reality. Just look at this guy doing James Gunn's moody Superman image. However, unfortunately, the savvy social media team aren't the ones who made the movie, so who's to say what the merit of this new movie will actually be in the final result? Even with Samuel L. Jackson's Garfield Sr. in the mix, I'm just not optimistic. But you never know, we could be in for a massive surprise. And I mean massive. If this movie is actually good, I'll just have to take the week off and sit in a bath of lasagna or something. I don't expect it, but it will then dictate our social media lives for the next 4 to 5 years, I can tell you now. They're totally cooking this up to be a franchise. But hey, if the movie is actually good, will you also be doing the same with a lasagna bath? Let me know. On that note, I'll end things off here. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Let us know your thoughts over on our Discord server, and I shall see you in a little bit.